Welcome to Fix It for Josh's Sake. Today I want to continue on a process that I started last week, and that is I want to work on this hex clutch a little bit more. The challenge I ran into was that this center nylon hex bushing was wore out, and so I went online, ordered myself a new one, and I need to press this old one out and press a new one in. The challenge that I find is that these new ones they're selling online do not have the grooves, like you can see like that. This is how the old one is, so that the Allen screws can thread in. The new ones are completely smooth and round. So I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey and a thought process on how I'm going to properly slot this nylon hex bushing so that it can be pressed into this face or base of the clutch, and then I can screw my Allen screws in. Come on with me as I go on this process and fix it for Josh's sake. What do they say? Information is power, right? So first thing you need to know is that to get these Allen bolts out, Allen screws, you need to grab yourself a 5/64 inch Allen wrench. All right, it's small, it's pretty petite, but it is the size needed to back these out. The second thing I would say is do not expect these to back out very easily. In fact, I spent a lot of time with a little bitty tipped bit tapping and then flipping the face over and then tapping some more over here, and then I took a washer, set it on here, tapped on that a little bit. Of course, I sprayed it with some penetrating oil, and I tapped on this side, and then I tapped some more in the center. What I'm saying is, these Allen screws get seized up really stinking tight. So take your time, tap around, kind of break everything loose. You got to jar it, you got to shock them, and eventually they will come loose. It took me a process of screwing them in, screwing them out, screwing them in, screwing them up, and eventually you start to hear click, click, click. Spray some more oil, do a little more shocking, and eventually they come out. All right. The next thing you'll want to know is that those Allen screws are actually 10/24s. Okay, that's your size and thread. Size 10, 24 threads per inch. And I have a tap here because in the future we're going to talk about tapping the threads on this new one. But that helps you understand. Get your 5/64 inch Allen wrench to get these out. Know that they are 10/24s in case you need to replace them. Now we're going to move on to the next process or the next challenge here. In order to press out this old hex bushing, you have two options. Either grab a 5/8 inch. You will see that it merely grabs the center. If you can see that, it does not grab all the way out to the edge. Or you could grab a 3/4 inch washer. These are both grade 8 hard. The problem that you will have with this 3/4 inch one is it is going to be the exact same size as what you're trying to press out. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to go with the bigger one, and I'm going to just hit it a little bit on my grinder wheel. Probably put a bolt in the center here, let it spin as I grind it down just a little bit so that I don't have interference, but I'm going to use a little more meat mass of this washer to press out that wore out hex bushing. The next detail that I was scratching my head on for a while is that these holes here are in the clutch halfway, and then the other half needs to be on here. So I have a little strategy, and what I did is I went and picked myself up a couple 1-inch washers and a great big 1-inch bolt and a couple 1-inch nuts. Why does that matter? Well, look at this magic. Take your 1-inch nut, drop it in. Boom. That is the size of this hex. And so now we have the ability to control these washers. And what I did is I took this washer, set it down here on the table, put my disc over top, or put my clutch plate over top of it and centered it real well so that I could draw the marks of where those holes need to be. Now that I have those holes drilled there, I'm going to take a center punch and I'm going to punch each of those 3 spots in the center, and I'm going to drill them out on my drill press to the size of this bit. Now this is a number 25 bit, and so that's the size that you need in order to have enough meat or mass to tap. So I'm going to drill those 3 holes out with this bit, and then I am going to be setting it on this bolt, screwing down this nut, setting my hex collar over top of it, and then I'll bring another one like this. But what that's going to give me is a jig to be able to drill. Well, let me flip it around here. It'll give me a jig to be able to hit those holes exactly on this collar. When it's all stacked up, I'll have a hole here, hole there. I have my new collar there. The old collar is in here to give me enough spacing, but that's exactly where the hole is going to come through. That washer holds it on. Now we can set this in the drill press, and we'll be able to perfectly drill down and put the proper grooves in this fresh collar, and then we'll press it into the face of the clutch, and then we'll be able to tap the new holes and screw in our Allen screws. So I'm going to get busy here, make this all come together, and start putting this hex clutch back the way it's supposed to be, all rebuilt, fresh, and ready to go. I'm down here at my drill press with some of the more detailed work happens. First thing I did is I went ahead and center punched the 3 dots that I had made with the permanent marker, and I think I got those spot on. And then I have my drill press locked and ready to drill those. I'm going to put a little cutting oil on each of these as I drill, and I'm going to go real slow because I want to keep my drill bit nice and sharp as I drill these holes. This isn't a grade 8 hard washer, so it should drill pretty easy. Success. Well, here we have it. All 3 holes are drilled. I had to clean them up a little bit because there were some burrs, but for less than $10, I think this is going to be a really slick jig for drilling out the 3 holes on my hex center. You know what they say, the punch is in the bowl, the proof is in the pudding, spit or get off the pot. Well, I got the collar locked in here. We'll tighten it down, and I'll get it centered on here so that we can drill this in. I think we're at a place where we're going to have some pretty good luck. I'm going to go real slow so that that nylon can nicely fall away from just half that drill bit. If I go too fast, I'm afraid the bit might walk away a little bit, so I'm trying to go real slow and let it just stay right in the pocket. Let's see. I think that's pretty good. Well, there we have it. There's the third hole. Oh, I'm real happy with that. Let's take a closer look at this. I've got the grooves cut there. They match up with the washer holes. All those look pretty good. I want to point out one more detail after we take this nut off and we take this washer off. Something I felt was important is that nut is in here and it's keeping that spline the same, so that way the old one that's all shot is still giving me a bit of a guide to know exactly where to drill those holes. So yeah, that's a pretty good jig. I'm real happy with that. I'm going to go now work on getting that pressed into the face of my hex clutch. Now that I've got everything back up here on the bench, here's the collar I just drilled. I want to point out something. These all have this little line or groove in it, and that's a reference point. But I've also noticed that these holes in the actual clutch face, they're not a perfect triangle. They're off a little bit. So it actually matters to pay attention to where you marked your washer and where this collar needs to land. So I use this line on the back here as my reference to come through. Here's my top, T for top, and then this line goes through, and now all those holes match up. But if I dialed this 1/3 either way, those holes don't match up. So keep that in mind, and maybe even if you mark this plate with a reference point to associate with the line on your clutch, and I think you're going to have a lot better luck that way. I've got everything staged, everything set, everything's lined up. I'm right here because this is the corner of the table where the leg is, and I'm going to try to drive this down without using a press. If you have a press, obviously that's the way to do it, but I'm going to see if I can just tap this in. So far, it feels like it's going down straight. It's driving down nice. Wow, this is going pretty good. I'm going to stop and check my... Okay, I got another 1/16 of an inch there before it bottoms out. Oh, I feel pretty good about this. Oh, come on. A little bit more over here. Say don't overdrive it because I've seen these crack out, so we're trying not to overdrive it in. We just want to bottom this out so you can't fit a fingernail underneath there anymore. One more time around the horn here. All right. That looks pretty good. I think this turned out real nice. I have that new bushing pressed in there, lined up like that. You can see how I was following my line there. There's my top of it. It goes in. I'm going to admit one thing on this one. I may have had a little overkill on my prep work for this side. This is what rides against the belt, because once this is pressed in, we can come from this side and drill a hole. If you're in a drill press, you can set this flat and drill a hole through those, and these are big enough to help hold and guide the drill bit. But all my prep work for sure is important when it comes to this one, because there's no guide for the drill bits at all. So what I'm going to be doing is, there's my notch. The same notch that, lines up with this one here. This notch right there is going to be my guide. I take my washer, set it up over top of those holes, and that will be my guide for drilling this particular piece of nylon when I press this one in. So I don't consider this a loss. I just consider it maybe overkill for this one. If I do this again, I'll press out the old bushing, press in the new bushing, then set it in the drill press and drill those 3 holes. This one, I do not have that luxury, so I will still be using my little jig I built here to be able to drill another collar, getting it ready to press into here. This nylon tap's pretty easy. Again, I'm grabbing this 1024 tap and just driving that in. Remember that it will not go all the way through because it'll bottom out on that lip in there. But once I have these nicely tapped and cleaned out, I'm going to drive in the Allen screws. When I say bottom out, it's pretty easy to tell. You can see the tip of the tap right there. There it is. And that's all the way in. So that one's cleaned out and ready for the screw. It always feels good to come to the closure of a project where you can kind of put in the last screws and button things up. This was a bigger project than I expected in the beginning, but I am real happy with how it turned out. And I'm not as intimidated by hex clutches anymore. I feel like they're a clutch I'm willing to work on, willing to do some cleanup and some tune-up and that sort of thing, because I do know that there was a time when this was the clutch that was the race clutch that people wanted. As a lot of performance parts for racing machines goes, sometimes the better performing parts need a little more attention, a little more love. So thanks for watching along as I worked on this. I enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I know I learned some things. Hope you also have fun getting ready for the season that's coming. Man, we're going to have a great winter, and I'm looking forward to getting out on the snow. If you enjoyed what you saw today, remember to give me a thumbs up. Go ahead and give me a comment if you have a better idea or way that you do your tune-ups on a hex clutch. Share it with a friend if they need an idea. Give me a follow and subscribe if you want to see me work on more projects like this. Thank you again watching me as I fix it for Josh's sake. I know I said goodbye, but I realized that there's a little bit more I want to say about this little jig I made. First of all, I don't know how I would have fastened down the hex nylon center without having a jig like this to drill the holes in. The way I did it on the bottom plate, on this plate, was fine. I followed the holes here of this other one, matched them up, drilled it through, and everything was great. I do have to say that there is a bit of flaw, though, in my logic, in that, I mean, obviously, I'm replacing this because there's play, and a lot of play. And so rather than matching this to that, I think what I would say is make sure you just get your washer set in the center. If we're saying this is the flat we're trying to match, then get this washer in the center of that flat, because there's enough flex here to mean that when I bolt this together, it's probably an 1/8 inch off from the center of the ramps. And then the same challenge happened up here in that I had both of these off enough to be annoying, and I had to do some rework to get them to match. So 2 things I would say: make sure you're drilling on the center of the hex rather than following this ramp or this old one that's wore out. The other thing I would say is rather than trying to match this pattern that is the face of the clutch, set it on your clutch and mark it with a permanent marker in the spots where it's supposed to be. And then really you only need 1 hole to tell you where to hit center, and you line it up and we thread this tight, and then we can go ahead and drill through that one hole, rather than trying to get this triangle to match, because there is a little bit of difference there. Each one is a little bit different. So those are the two tips I have for you. I think you definitely need something like this for the face. I don't know how I would have put that on without having a jig like this to drill it. But at the end of the day, I think these clutches are fun, and I think they're a good time working on, and I hope that this gives you a little extra knowledge and resource of tools, mental tools in your toolbox as you work on your Hex Clutch. Thanks for watching Fix It for Josh's sake.